Hi. I'm going to talk to you now about how to read the text that we're going to be using in class. The text we're going to be using is a preprint copy of Turfgrass History and Literature by James B. Beard. And it's an excellent piece of literature that covers turfgrass history, and in fact it's the first text that has been written specifically to focus on turfgrass history. So I'm very excited I had an opportunity to review that, and it's going to be an excellent resource for us in class. And so I want to talk a little bit about how you read the text when you have an opportunity to do that after you've viewed the videos. The videos that you're going to be viewing, the lecture material, is going to cover topics in pretty decent amount of detail. But there's going to be additional sources and additional pieces of information that you're going to want to be able to use that you're going to pull out from the textbook or the PDF that will be available on the Blackboard site. So I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to read that and how I want you to focus on reading that so that you don't get bogged down in feeling like you have to memorize every single word out of the text. So for example, in the text, a lot of the material that we'll cover in lectures deals with dates and times of certain events or people or discoveries that have been made during the development of turfgrass science and management across time. And so when we talk about dates and times, it's important to remember those dates, but it's more important to remember the relative position of those things. I'm not going to get bogged down so much except for major contributions at the specific date, but it's important for you to have a general understanding of how a particular, say for example, mower development, how those mower developments occurred and in what order they occurred, so that you have a sequence of events over time and then a rough idea of that timeline in terms of the beginning and the end. So when you come across something like that, it's important to think about that and read and pay attention to that material. Then there's other sections where you might have a section heading, and that's a word that you're not familiar with. I would encourage you to go out and use your web resources to find out what that word is or find out what that area of material is covering. For example, we talk a lot about in the early parts of the class about the development of turf grasses in the early periods of the development of the earth, plate tectonics, Laurasia, Gondwana land. If these are things that you're not familiar with from geology or other sciences that you might have had back in high school or college, then that's something that you want to use web resources to go out and search and understand a little bit more about that. I'm not going to ask about specifics, but I want you to be able to put that into context when you're reading the text. So this is a section where if you come across terms that you're not familiar with, that's something you want to pay attention to. The other thing about the text is that in areas of the text, like say for example this one, where maybe this is a term you're not terribly familiar with, but you've seen it in the video, you've gone out and researched it with the web, then this is a section of text that you can skim and maybe just take one note or two and just pay attention to it, make sure that you understand it with regards to how I covered it in the video. When there's a term or a definition that is given, say for example this section of text has a definition, then that's something that you want to be able to make sure that you understand. And if it's something that I covered in the video, then again that's something that maybe you can skim and make sure that you know it. If it's something that I haven't covered in the video, then that's something that you might want to pay a little more attention to and make sure that you spend a little more time on it. But more importantly, when you find an area of text where maybe I asked a question from the video as a thought question, these are the kinds of things that show you just how important that text material is, because there may be details in this part of the text that I didn't have time to cover in the video, and so, or that's something that we talk about in class. And so these are where questions on exams and things like that, where we bring concepts together and we find ways to put that material together, that I'm going to want you to be able to know. And so when we're reading the text, the key piece to remember is to make sure that when you've looked at the videos, we've had the class, and you read the text, that those things come together in a kind of a whole picture of what we're talking about on that particular topic. And that you don't have to memorize every word in the text, but you need to be able to scan the text and make sure that you can pull out bits and pieces of detail that maybe we didn't cover in class or we didn't cover in the video, or that I asked a question about to get you thinking and then refer back to it in the text. So these are the kinds of things that I want you to pay attention to in that area.